Hello. Wait for a few minutes and we'll start. All right, let's start now. I'll say the prayers, and today's session is going to be on yoga of meditation. Uh, let's. I'll do the Shanti mantra of Nasadiya Suktam again. Um, and we'll start now. Om. Om Vang Me Manasi Pratishtita Mano Me Vachi Pratishthitam Aviravir Maedhi Vedasya Mani Staha Shrutam Me Ma Prahasihi Anenadhite Nahuratran Sandadhami Vritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram Avatu Vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hello everyone. Let's do the review of the all the sessions that we had today. Because this session is going to be on the yoga of meditation, which we can use all the other steps that we had talked about. We discussed about last week, last sessions, and we could uh, do everything in sequence to form a module of meditation for uh, awareness of happiness. So let's start off with the first one that we talked about, the session, the mindfulness tip that we talked about. And also today's session will just be talking about the the six steps and the yoga of meditation. And so, unless you have any questions or anything that you want to talk about in the last sessions, we can do that now, or we can continue further. Um, Welcome. Thanks somebody has joined here. Let's make it interactive. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue. Um, so, as I said, today's session is going to be on yoga of meditation, and this is going to be the module that we can form with all the six steps that we talked about last sessions. And so, the first one was breathing, and there was that's actually is the important step which everybody does, and they cannot live with it even for a few moments if you don't breathe. Uh, the breathing is also is being researched and being done by a lot of people on this, and it the latest research I think I published also online. Uh, the Stanford research that they did on these different types of breathing. Uh, and so in yoga, it's called they do the different types of breathing techniques are called pranayama. And one of the techniques that we discussed about in the first session was the normal breathing, which was you know the ratio of 1:2 in the inhale to exhale. So that's very easy, very you know uh, uh, to do it mindfully uh, and purposefully, right? So that's the first one that we can do. So this one is it forms the first basic step in calming your mind, because yoga of meditation is all about quietening your mind with all the different thoughts, and then the more quieter the mind is, the higher the happiness, the higher the way the mind becomes calm, right? So, and that gives more purpose, more clarity in actions and in doing other things too. uh, and then so let's talk about that a little bit more. So the research that was done at Stanford was, they did a couple of techniques on breathing. One was very similar to what we had discussed in the first session, and the other one was called cyclic breathing, and it's actually very similar to different uh, like taking in the breath that we talked about, and then holding the breath for some time, and then exhaling out equal number of times, and then you know uh, stopping the breath for some more time. So this was actually the four steps that they did, and then they had some other things where they had published, and it's quite common, and a lot of people have done a lot of different types of studies on this earlier, but this was one of the latest one which came out recently, and it does help to understand that people are also recognizing the fact that that is a factor in the breathing is a factor in making your mind calmer, and and make it uh, more aware of making a person more aware of the happiness. Uh, all right, so that was the first one. So as we said in the beginning of this session, it's going to be a review of all the different techniques that we talked about, all the mindfulness tips that we had discussed, and that actually forms a good module for doing the meditation. And as I said earlier, each of the steps could be done at different levels. It could be taken up uh, by different people on the different spiritual paths, right? So each of them will be in a different level, and each of these tips could be done individually. They're not dependent on each other, but they definitely form a sequence of steps in order, you know, for to reach the the subject of what our discussion is today, the yoga of meditation. So that's uh, the steps that actually is in the chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. It's very much Lord Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and explaining about the highest yoga of meditation and how it could be achieved. So there are a couple of things which will go on that, but before that, I wanted to just go over the next mindfulness tip that we talked about last time. So the second one was about the gratitude, right? So gratitude is one of the important thing that a person and human being can express, and it could be as simple as you know. Uh, gratitude for you being alive and being able to breathe. So that was the first technique that we talked about, right? The breathing. So that could be as simple as that, and it could be depending on the person's experiences. They could uh, think about any of those things which would make them uh, feel 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 grateful. So it's as I say, you're counting your blessings, right? So that's one of the things that that person can do. The second tip was the gratitude. So that's very important. So gratitude will allow a person to experience the present moment in a much more calmer way. Uh, Breathing being the first technique, right? Of that. So so that's actually the two tips which are pretty much in tune with a person getting started with this meditation. So the third one was, you have to do the discrimination, the viveka. So that is done by the right action that you're going to do now. I mean, suppose a person is just waiting for to start off, in the sense to do an action. So uh, the third tip, which is the viveka, discrimination of the thing, to discriminate which is the right action and which is the wrong action, right? So discriminating between those two is very important, and that can be done by having dispassion towards the unreal, dispassion towards the wrong, uh, and so and also that also comes uh, by mere learning all the different uh, the things that Lord Krishna has talked about in different verses. But uh, we could think of it as doing an action with not worried about the result of that, right? That's one thing. uh, because doing the action in the present moment is more important, to concentrate on that particular act. So that's what I would say. Um, let's see. So the other part that we talked about was the action itself. To do the action as a sacrifice, the higher the purpose of that action, the higher the purpose uh, of what you decide to do, the much more deeper satisfaction and um I mean, you'll get in that particular thing, right? So, for example, if you're doing the action, always being very anxious about the result, then you would not be able to concentrate on that particular thing, right? So, doing an action with dispassion uh, doesn't mean that you're not concentrating or giving you 100% in that. So, it's actually uh, going to be more fruitful by doing it in this way, is what Lord Krishna says about that in the Karma Yoga part of the Bhagavad Gita. So, again, these verses in Bhagavad Gita are also pretty much a lot of these things, a lot of these verses, a lot of these thoughts, a lot of these uh, information that Lord Krishna is sharing with Arjuna is also found in many Upanishads. Um, and you can easily, you know, so because even in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that this was this was imparted by Lord Krishna to Vivaswan, the sun god at the time of creation. So it's amazing how these old scriptural teachings are still valid as of today. And so this, as we talk about the four steps we have discussed just now. So the action and doing it in the right way, with the right kind of dissent, like discrimination, viveka is very important. And then comes the empathy, right? Empathy towards uh, yeah, I mean, that also forms in one of these things. So it's very important to have empathy towards the different people, different walks of life, where we come across in different individuals, right? So sharing the joys and sorrows and feeling empathetic towards others is forms a basic uh, you know uh, it uplifts the person in the spiritual path of that, for that particular individual. So it also forms one of the basic tenets of Advaita philosophy. We'll be discussing that pretty much in this session. So the yoga of meditation, today's session will be talking about the how the Nasadiya Suktam inspires a person in the Advaitin philosophy. And one of the main pillars of Advaita is what we'll be discussing. So that will be, which is very distinct with other uh, thoughts. So it's very interesting how the yoga of meditation is focused towards that. So that was the empathy, and now comes the equanimity of mind, the equipoise of mind. Um, so that's one of the things which we had. I got a lot of feedback from other you know viewers about this. Uh, it's doable. It's not easy to do this equanimity of mind, uh, equipoise of mind is certainly doable, but to stay in that level is kind of difficult, even for a wise person with full of wisdom. So even if an individual can do that for a certain number of time in a day, is that person can feel uh, a big amount of um difference in her capability for the rest of the day, uh, and that can be experienced, and that is actually very uh, that is the highest yoga. That's what Lord Krishna says, and uh, of course Arjuna has got a lot of other questions when this yoga is being taught, uh, because quietening the mind is subduing the mind is forms a basic part of this yoga, and that can be achieved by practice, is what Lord Krishna says. So it's uh, let's go down to the equanimity of mind again. We'll talk more on that, on the for example, the action itself that when you're doing, uh, if you are doing it as a sacrifice, and so when you compare that with the equanimity, how you're going to do with the joys and sorrows, right? So if you are getting that result, the action according to what you have designed, then the the happiness will be it will be a different level in the state of happiness, right? And so if it doesn't give you the exact result of what you are doing, then you'll feel the sorrow of that. So the previous tip that we talked about, the empathy, also plays a good part of this. So it's when you are equipoised with whatever the joys and sorrows, and then your mind doesn't get disturbed. I mean, if you are subduing your mind, if you are like quietening your mind, and going forward in this is what counts. So the technique of this is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita again, with the conversation between Lord Krishna and Lord Arjuna. So let's go now towards that. Unless you have any questions, we can take it up, or we can move forward. So let's see. Bring up on the time. Yeah. So let me open up that particular uh, verses. I had uploaded that in the beginning of the uh, during launch of the session itself. It's in chapter 6, verses, I think, starts from verse number 10. So, and then in the beginning, Lord Krishna is talking about saying that he who does his duties, uh, obligatory duties, right? In the first verse of chapter 6, uh, without expecting the fruits of action, is a sannyasi, according to Sankhya Yogi, and a yogi, karma yogi both. So he is a Sankhya Yogi as well as a karma yogi both. If he is doing his duty according to the obligatory duties without expecting the fruits of action. And then Lord Krishna says he's no sannyasi as a renouncer who has merely renounced the sacred fire, even so he is no yogi who has merely given up all activity. So as we talked about earlier in the sessions, action is much higher than inaction, and so there are certain times when an inaction is better, but this is what is was discussed earlier in the sessions too. Now, let's go to the uh, verse number 5, where Lord Krishna is talking about the mind being one's best friend and also being its worst enemy. So, one should lift oneself by one's own efforts and should not degrade oneself, for one's own self is one's friend and one's own self is one's enemy. So that's the verse number 5. Subduing a mind is forms the basic part of this yoga of meditation. And so let's also talk about the Advaita pillar, which I discussed talked about earlier, which is very important. And empathy forms basic, you know, uh, a tip actually that we could use towards that. So that actually comes in verse number 29, I think. Yeah, that's right. So verse 29 says, the yogi who is united in identity with the all pervading infinite consciousness and sees unity everywhere beholds the self present in all beings and all beings as assumed in the self. So this is the teaching of Advaita philosophy. This is the main pillar of Advaita philosophy. And again, the verse 30 says, he who sees me, that's the universe self, Lord Krishna, right, present in all beings and all beings existing within me, never loses sight of me and I never lose sight of him. So this is what Lord Krishna is talking about in Arjuna in verse 30. And so then verse 31, uh, the Lord Krishna says, the yogi who is established in union with me and worships me as residing in all beings as their very self abides in me no matter what he does. And verse 32 says, Arjuna, he who looks on all as one, on analogy of his own self, and looks upon the joy and sorrow of all with a similar eye, such a yogi is deemed the highest of all. So this is the joy and sorrow that we talked about in empathy, right? So this is what I was talking about in the Advaita philosophy. These are the basic principles of Advaita philosophy. And then let's take up the verse number 10, the actual uh, techniques that or methods that Lord Krishna is teaching about doing this yoga and how to subdue the mind. Uh, so in verse 10, uh, Lord Krishna says, living in seclusion all by himself, the yogi who has controlled his mind and body. So first of all, uh, there are different things that a person has to do before you start this, and they're considered the basic uh, things that a person should do. And if a person has bad intentions, or doesn't have and it is actually very much the Patanjali sutras that we talked about. So I've not covered that. Now maybe in next future sessions I might cover those. So I'm taking a top-down approach here, uh, talking about the tips that you're going to get in doing this, and then coming down to the practice itself. So the verse 10 again, we'll go back to that, and it says, the yogi who has controlled his mind and body and is free from desires and void of positions should constantly engage his mind in meditation. And so this is how it goes with verse number 11. Having firmly placed his seat in a spot which is free from dirt and other impurities, with a sacred kusa grass, a deer skin, and a cloth spread thereon, one below the other, neither very high nor very low. So this was actually the teaching which is uh, which was imparted to Arjuna uh, long time ago. And there's so many different types of people who are doing it currently, the meditation. So there are different ways that people sit. So in order to do this, basically a person has to sit in a spot which is free from dirt and other impurities, and and then we'll go to the next verse, which uh, which explains how a person after occupying the seat should do that. Right. So it says, and occupying that seat, concentrating the mind and controlling the functions of the mind and senses, he should practice yoga for self purification. So the major importance is being given here about concentrating and subduing the mind, quietening the mind, controlling the functions of the mind and the senses. So and this can be achieved, but there's it needs a lot of practice, and 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 certain amount of dedication and regularity, and that can be done. Uh, so the next verse says, the verse number 13, holding the trunk, head, and neck straight and steady, remaining firm and fixing the gaze on the tip of his nose without looking in other direction. Now, verse 14, firm in the vow of complete chastity and fearless, keeping himself perfectly calm and with the mind held in restraint and fixed on me. That's Lord Krishna. The vigilant yogi should sit absorbed in me. So basically, this is what Lord Krishna is talking about, and how to do the meditation. And uh, the verse 15 says, uh, Lord Krishna is talking about here to Arjuna, which says, thus constantly applying his mind in me, the yogi of disciplined mind attains the everlasting peace consisting of supreme bliss which abides in me. So basically, all this meditation is yoga means union with God, right? So yoga is that. So the meditation practices which are being done currently with different uh, uh, but with different teachers these days use this common basic knowledge, and they they differ in different ways of quietening the mind or controlling the mind. Uh, that's what I would say. Now let's go back to the verse number 16 uh, and verse number 17, where Lord Krishna is talking about that this yoga is to be done by people who are, you know, um, what the diet and exercise and things of that, and how the sleep and things are. So sleep and wakefulness is needed here. So the verse 16, and Lord Krishna says to Arjuna here that Arjuna, this yoga is neither for him who overeats nor for him who observes a complete fast. It is neither for him who is given to too much sleep, nor even for him who is ceaselessly awake. And verse 17, yoga which rids one of woe is accomplished only by him who is regulated in diet and recreation. Okay, that's the first thing. And regulated in performing actions. That's the second thing. And regulated in sleep and wakefulness. So again, Lord Krishna stresses about the uh, the way that this yoga has to be practiced. So first of all, is Lord Krishna is talking about in the uh, verse 14, where it says, "Firm in the vow of complete chastity and fearless, keeping himself perfectly calm and within and with the mind held in restraint." So, keeping the mind, subduing the mind, and fighting the mind, calming the mind is focused on here. And if you look at the other questions that Arjuna has after this, is very very practical. It says that Arjuna asks Lord Krishna how to calm the mind, and because the mind is very very to quietening the mind, to quiet the mind is make it quiet is really really difficult. So but then uh, the next verse, where in verse number 33, uh, Arjuna says, Lord Krishna, owing to restlessness of mind, I do not perceive the stability of this yoga in the form of equilibrium, which you have just spoken of. So, verse 34, for Krishna, the mind is very unsteady, turbulent, tenacious, and powerful, and therefore I consider it as difficult to control as the wind. But then Lord Krishna assures Arjuna in the next verses and says that the practice it does, you can achieve that. So Sri Bhagwan said, the mind is restless, no doubt, and difficult to curb, Arjuna, but it can be brought under control by repeated practice of meditation and the exercise of dispassion. So that's verse 35. And verse 36, Lord Krishna is saying, yoga is difficult of achievement for one whose mind is not subdued by him. However, who has the mind under control and is ceaselessly striving, it can be easily attained through practice. Such is my conviction. So again, so subduing the mind is stressed upon in this yoga, and different methods, different ways are being used currently by different teachers for doing this particular thing. So, unless you have any questions, we can continue. Or it's about almost halfway there now. Right. So let's continue further. Um, and in verse 25 uh, and verse 24, Lord Krishna is talking about how you can free yourself from this from different thoughts of the world, completely renouncing all desires arising from the thoughts of the world, and fully restraining the whole pack of the senses from all sides by the time. And so it's important how to to restrain the senses and all, to subdue the mind, which forms the basic uh, method technique of doing this, and that's the way that can be achieved by practice, as Lord Krishna said earlier in the different verses which I've explained. Um, and then in verse 25, Lord Krishna says he should, through gradual practice, attain tranquility and fixing the mind on God through reason controlled by steadfastness. He should not think of anything else. And then verse 26, drawing back the restless and fidgety mind from all those objects after which it runs, should repeatedly fix it on God. And so, and also verse 27, Lord Krishna is talking about for to the yogi whose mind is perfectly serene, who is sinless, whose passion is subdued, and who is identified with Brahma, the embodiment of truth, knowledge, and bliss. Supreme happiness comes as a matter of course. So this is this can be experienced, and it's possible and it's doable. That's what Lord Krishna says with conviction. And so the other part that we discussed today in the session was about the Advaita, the Nasadiya Advaita, philosophy. The Nasadiya Suktam talks about it's a riddle, right? So it tries to gauge how much one has understood the scriptures. And Advaita philosophy, which we talked about, the main basic principle uh, about seeing one in all the other living beings and all the other living beings in you. That forms the basic philosophy. And then this is also, an atheist who doesn't believe in this could be, we could step back on the other uh, thing that we talked about earlier. The If you go down to the quantum physics, and then the discovery by Peter Higgs about the Higgs field, the atheist can look at that and try to understand. So it's for, for different big spectrum of people. They can go in different ways, in with different approach, right? Is what I would say. Uh, just to refresh our memories, the Higgs field talks about a constant energy field which is permeating the whole universe, and whose source cannot be cut off, and which is constant, and it permeates all, everywhere. So that if a person can experience and then feel the oneness with all other beings, is what I was talking about in the Advaita philosophy. So it very much correlates with the 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 people, the yogis who do it on a different path in a spiritual way, with faith in God, as compared to the atheist who could do it in that way too, right? So that's what I was talking about. So how are you doing on time? I think it's about 20 more minutes are there. So unless you have any questions, we can continue, or we can uh, take it. I think one more thing that came up in by the viewers said was the equanimity of mind. Um, so for that to be achieved, uh, again, the subduing the mind, the controlling the mind, the senses is plays a very important role in that. So looking at the feedback that I got about that, uh, it actually comes by practice again, right? So it's not it's a tip, it's a direction, it's a pointer towards what one can achieve, one can do, and then it's not that a person just gets that as soon as the work starts. It depends on the person too. I mean, it may be that the person is already individual is already in a very high level of spiritual path, and it would be easily achievable by that. So for people which in this moment, in the Nasadiya Advaita movement, we are focusing on the family as a unit, right? So we are talking to different people on different levels. This could be taken up on by each individual depending on the capacity and the effort and the interest, uh, and so there are different um, sadhanas, that is the methods that they need to do earlier. So Dr. Krishna is talking about a sinless person, right? So there are a lot of things that there are different Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which Sankhya Yogis, there are different levels that could be done as a basic stage, and we'll take it up in the next future sessions too. But I'm taking a top-down approach here. So just to say that what's the thing that can be achieved here, right? That's the first thing that you know. So it helps a person have a goal, have a thing that you look forward to see that what can be achieved in this, and so that's what my approach is here. Um, so let's go back to the other part that Lord Krishna had talked about, regularity in actions, right? So, a person who can use the actions in a way that you can economize the energy. So, for example, again, it comes to practice, and then we can the the expert. I mean, you become an expert by practice. So if you're able to do a certain action in a short duration of time, with more dexterity, with a lot of more uh, uh, the right actions to do that particular thing. So the the viveka, that the third mindfulness state that we talked about, is a very important part of it. And then that comes a practice again. Practice that is passion is unreal, and by holding on to the real thing. So that's one of the things. When you are regulated in performing actions, is what the verse number 17 says. So that again comes a practice. So this is one of the things that I wanted to talk. And again, the quieter the mind, the greater the happiness, right? So it's an um, it's an antidote. It's for removing all sorrows. So quieting the mind is what is stressed on in this yoga. So uh, so you have to develop that inner yoga here. So that's what Lord Krishna is talking about. Um, so the other thing which I wanted to talk about was we talked about performing all your obligatory duties without any anxiety, the fruits of action. So you got to act in the present moment with awareness. That is when you're fully aware of of your being. Uh, the future is unknown. I mean, it's not that you know what. So unless if you are not focused on the present moment, then all the the effort that a person puts in action doesn't bear that the fruit. So I mean, it's not it will not be 100% effort, right? So doing an effort, doing the work is your right, is a person's ability and person's right to do that, right? That's what the person has to focus on. And the quieter the mind is at that time, the better the action would be, and the better the result would be, and those kind of things. So basically, the calmness of mind is focused, is required. So uh, different steps to do that at different levels. taking these different tips is we could make it as a module of practice of by meditation, and that could be achieved. So again, the the basic principle, again, the basic pillar of Advaita, that's the Advaita movement, right? Advaita means that you see with the eye of wisdom that unity of oneness that's everywhere. So that's if you take it technologically, the quantum level, could go to the Higgs field, and then we could talk about that constant energy field which is permeating all the universe, and then and so if you're able to identify with all pervading infinite consciousness and see that unity everywhere, that's not see in the sense with the wisdom, if you're able to do that, uh, and then see the unity everywhere, right? That's the basic principle of Advaita. So you behold that self present in all beings, and all beings uh, as within you, in yourself. So this is the verse 29 in chapter 6 again. So let's review the next verse. That's the 30th again. So it's basically Lord Krishna says that he who sees me, that's the universe self, Lord Krishna, present in all beings and all beings existing within me, never loses sight of me, and I never lose sight of him. So this is the Advaita basic philosophy that Lord Krishna is talking about here. So again, practice with this passion, this yoga of meditation, and one can achieve it by subduing the mind and senses. Is what I would say. So it's very important. On It's all always stressed on a lot of this. No, what do you call it? The controlling the mind and senses. So unless you have any questions, we can continue further. We can take up any things that you have. So basically, today I wanted to talk about just this. So it forms a good sequence of things that a person can achieve, and in a top-down approach, we know exactly the big steps that a person can take. It's a pointer given in this module, which we had discussed each level, and we can in future sessions we'll definitely go down deeper on the way that we can achieve this things. So the yoga of meditation is one where it will allow a person uh, to quieten the mind, and then again, Lord Krishna is again confirming the doubts and removing the doubts, confirming the thoughts that this can be achieved by practice, and this is doable definitely. And to a person with even with a lot of wisdom, is who would not be able to stay is in this state for a long time. And again, joys and sorrows are both part uh, of the of nature, and so having equanimity and letting not the mind get perturbed, right? That's the tip that we had talked about. The sixth tip is doable, definitely, and so that helps and comes by more and more practice, and a lot of other things which actually I had taken it as the basic requirements that person should have, basic qualities of the person before they start on this. And in the top-down approach, that I'm taking here, uh, this is once you start practicing each of those tips, you would find it for yourself. A person would be able to discover what would work and what wouldn't work, depending on the spiritual path, spiritual level that person is at in that particular moment. Uh, that's what I would say. Um, Looking at any other things that you have to talk here. So let's talk about the Nasadiya Suktams, the first verse also. It says that before the world was created, so there existed that only one Lord of Universe. So that's what here the yoga of meditation that Lord Krishna is imparting to Arjuna is talking about. Uh, so so the Advaita philosophy, where a person sees everything in the Lord of Universe, and within that person is the Advaita philosophy. So it's that's what this movement is all about. Recognizing that, understanding, and then utilizing that towards a person's purpose in life. You know, uh, so, yeah, it will help really person to do it and then get it by practice. It's as Lord Krishna also says, it's definitely doable by clearing the doubt of Arjuna when he says that the mind is always restless, and how do you get the stability of that yoga? So that's what I would say. Let's see, anything else I wanted to talk about today was yeah. So there are a lot of other technological advances that we talked about in the earlier sessions. So basically, in today's session, I wanted to just review all the mindfulness tips because they really form a good module of different steps that a person can start off, and then depending on that individual's level and the spiritual path, each of the steps can be practiced independently of each other. uh, if a person already has that capability, or they could be taken as a sequence and practiced. And so again, in this top-down approach, you can easily focus on the things that a person needs more practice, and you can it's a tip, it's a pointer to explore more uh, in different directions as required by the person itself. So that's what I would say. All right. Um, let's talk about a couple of verses again, unless you have any questions. We have a few more minutes. So, unless you have any questions, we can continue further with some more verses which I wanted to discuss today. So, it was so. In verse 19, Lord Krishna is talking about as the light does not flicker in windless peace, such is stated to be the picture of the disciplined mind, the yogi practicing meditation on God. And verse 20, the state in which, curbed through the practice of yoga, the mind becomes still, and which, realizing God through subtle reason, purified by meditation on God, the soul rejoices only in God. So it's a very nice and important uh, way of achieving the 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 mind, the calmness in the mind. I think somebody was message here. Let me look at what it is. Oh, Bhagwan says, "Hi Ranjan. Yeah, as I'm watching on YouTube those live sessions, unable to talk to you. Is another option where we can listen to those live sessions and talk." Oh yeah, I think no, the way that I've done this here, one is because at the beginning I didn't have any lot of many volunteers, right? So it's very easy for for this session to get uploaded, and the way it's happening is a lot of feedbacks are coming, and then we are taking it up and talking. I would definitely look at different options on doing it, going further down, and that definitely is one of the things which we'll look into in the future sessions. Uh, uh, Thank you for your comment. Yeah. But we'll always feel free to connect with me and give me feedback, and we'll discuss that. So I did discuss about other uh, you know information and the feedback that we got from different viewers. So that's what I would be doing in the beginning of the sessions every time. So thanks again for joining. And unless you have any more questions, I think we are also uh, short on time now. It's like a couple of minutes more left. So unless you have anything else, we can close it, close the session. So I was talking about the couple of verses that we had taken up in the chapter 6 of this yoga of meditation. So uh, again, Lord Krishna confirms that you can get and achieve this the supreme happiness as a matter of course by practice and practice. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about in today's session, and I'll wait again for any feedback, anything that the viewers have, and then we'll discuss that in the next session. And so again, there are a lot of things that a person needs to do it before starting on this. But as in this approach, which I've taken up in the top-down approach, we know exactly what the goals are, what the tips are, what the directions that the person can explore for themselves. With that, let's close this session for today, and then so that we get more feedback, and and a lot of people can practice this meditation and achieve the success that they're looking for and the happiness they're looking for. So with this, I'll end this session for today with a prayer. Thank you for joining again. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. All right. Thank you for joining, and yeah, thanks again, everyone. Thanks everyone. All right, let's connect again in the next sessions, and hopefully you all get benefited with these sessions and these mindfulness tips. Hope to see you all again next week, same time, 6:30 to 7:30 Pacific time, in every Saturday on the same YouTube channel, and then it's 8 to 9 Indian Standard Time in the morning on Sundays. All right, Hari Om. Thank you for joining.